My 5-year-old son, Mateo, begged me not to take the pills. His small hands trembled as he pushed them away, tears streaming down his cheeks. "Mummy, please, they make me feel funny inside. I didn't listen. I trusted someone I thought I knew, someone I called a family friend, Elena Martinez, until the day Mateo collapsed in our kitchen, convulsing on the cold marble floor. I had no idea how dangerous blind trust could be. What Elena was hiding could have cost my son his life. And the worst part, I was the one who gave him the pills, day after day, ignoring every warning sign. Before I take you through this nightmare, comment where you're watching from. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because the next minutes will change the way you see the people around you. This isn't just a story about deception. It's about how the closest people in our lives can hide monsters behind perfect smiles. It all began 18 months ago on a quiet street in Coral Gables, Miami. Palm trees swayed in the warm breeze, their fronds casting dancing shadows across pristine white driveways. Yachts glided lazily in the marina, the sun glinting off white facades and perfectly manicured lawns. Coral Gables wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a statement. A dream come true for someone like me who had worked 3 jobs to afford our modest home there. Life felt perfect. Mateo was everything to me, full of boundless energy, running across the driveway in his light-up sneakers, scuffing the cobblestone I'd spent hours pressure washing, juice-stained fingers gripping his collection of toy cars, laughing at the sound of his own joy echoing through the garage. He had his father's dark curls and my stubborn determination. At 5 years old, he was reading above his grade level, asking questions about the universe that made me pull up Google late at night. I was a single mother. Mateo's father, Carlos, had left when Mateo was 2, disappearing into the chaos of his own addictions, leaving behind only child support payments that came sporadically, if at all. But we were okay. More than okay. I worked as a medical billing specialist from home, and Mateo attended a prestigious private kindergarten where he thrived. I thought we were untouchable, happy, safe. I thought I had built a fortress around us, with my careful choices and constant vigilance. I was wrong. Then Elena came into our lives. We met at a parent-teacher conference in September. Mateo's teacher, Mrs. Chen, had invited community mentors to speak about childhood development. Elena was one of them, elegant, late 30s, with glossy black hair pulled into a sophisticated chignon, wearing a cream silk blouse and pearl earrings that caught the fluorescent light. She had a smile that could charm anyone, and a way of speaking that made people lean in, hang on every word like she held secrets to a better life. "You must be Mateo's mother," she said, approaching me after the presentation. Her perfume was subtle, expensive jasmine, and something else I couldn't identify. "Mrs. Chen tells me he's exceptionally bright. Gifted, actually." I felt that swell of pride every parent knows. "Thank you, he loves learning." "I can see that." She glanced at Mateo, who was building an elaborate tower with blocks in the corner, his tongue poking out in concentration. "I work in pediatric nutrition and cognitive development. I've dedicated my life to helping children reach their full potential." She handed me a business card, heavy stock, embossed lettering. Dr. Elena Martinez, Ph.D., Pediatric Neuroscience and Nutrition. "You're a doctor." "Research mostly. But I've always believed that real change happens at the individual level, not just in laboratories." Her eyes were warm, genuine. "I'd love to get to know you both better. Perhaps coffee sometime." That coffee turned into weekly meetings. Elena became a fixture in our home, always offering help, watching Mateo when I had deadline crunches at work, taking genuine interest in his health, his learning milestones, his dreams. She brought books, advanced readers about space and dinosaurs. She taught him Spanish phrases, played chess with him on our patio while I prepared dinner. She was everything I'd never had growing up: sophisticated, educated, worldly. She'd traveled to conferences in Geneva and Singapore. She'd studied at Johns Hopkins. She spoke 4 languages. And she seemed to genuinely care about us. At first, it felt harmless. She was a friend, someone we trusted, and I believed she had only good intentions. My sister Lucia, visiting from Tampa one weekend, whispered a warning. "Don't you think she's a little too interested in Mateo?" But I brushed it off. Lucia had always been suspicious of everyone since her divorce. I see now that I was lonely, that I wanted someone in our lives who represented success, stability, and knowledge. Elena filled a void I didn't even know existed. Then, on a humid Tuesday evening in November, Elena brought the pills. We were sitting on my back porch, watching Mateo chase fireflies in the yard, his delighted squeals punctuating the evening chorus of crickets. Elena set her wineglass down carefully, the condensation leaving a ring on the teak table. "I've been working on something," she said quietly, her voice taking on that intimate tone she used when sharing something important. Something that could change everything for children, like Mateo. "What do you mean?" She pulled a small amber bottle from her designer handbag, the kind with a child-proof cap. Inside were small white tablets, innocuous looking. "These are specialized supplements, a proprietary blend I've developed through years of research. Vitamins, minerals, nootropics in carefully calibrated doses. They enhance neuroplasticity, improve focus, boost immune function, and accelerate cognitive development." I frowned. Mateo doesn't need supplements. He's healthy. Healthy, yes. But imagine if he could be extraordinary. Her eyes gleamed with conviction. "The ingredients are all natural, nothing synthetic, nothing dangerous. Lion's mane mushroom. Omega-3 fatty acids in their most bioavailable form. B-complex vitamins. Trace minerals. Think of it as premium fuel for a high-performance engine." "I don't know, Elena. Just try it. 1 month. If you don't see improvements in his focus, his energy, his overall well-being, stop immediately." She placed the bottle in my hand. "I've seen remarkable results in preliminary trials. Children reading 2 grade levels ahead within months, improved athletic performance, stronger immune systems, and it's completely safe. I've tested it extensively." The bottle felt heavy in my palm, weighted with possibility, or maybe with something else I couldn't name. The next morning, I placed 1 small white tablet next to Mateo's orange juice for breakfast. He was eating his favorite cereal, chocolate puffs that turned the milk brown. Still in his dinosaur pajamas. "What's that, Mummy?" "It's a special vitamin Miss Elena brought. It'll help you grow strong and smart." Mateo's face changed. Something flickered in his eyes, hesitation, maybe fear. His small hand trembled as he reached for the pill, then stopped midway. "I don't want to." "Come on, buddy. It's just a vitamin. Like the gummy ones Grandma gives you." "It doesn't look like that." His voice was small, uncertain. "It looks like the pills that made Abuelo sick. My father had died of cancer 2 years earlier." Mateo had vivid memories of visiting him in the hospital, of watching him take handfuls of medications that ultimately couldn't save him. "This is different, I promise. Miss Elena is a doctor. She would never give you something bad." I softened my voice, knelt beside his chair. "Trust Mummy, okay?" He stared at the pill for what felt like an eternity, his wide brown eyes glistening with unshed tears. Finally, he picked it up with shaking fingers, placed it on his tongue, and swallowed it with a grimace, chasing it with gulps of orange juice. I watched his little throat work as he swallowed, and I felt a brief flutter of unease that I immediately dismissed. "Good boy," I said, kissing his forehead. "See, that wasn't so bad." But I noticed the fear hadn't left his eyes. Not completely. Over the next days and weeks, subtle changes appeared. At first, they seemed positive. Mateo's teacher emailed to say his focus had improved dramatically. He was completing assignments faster, participating more in class discussions. I felt vindicated, proud. Elena had been right. But other things changed too. Mateo became irritable, snapping at small frustrations that never bothered him before. When his tower of blocks fell, he didn't laugh and rebuild, he screamed, his face turning red, tears of fury streaming down his cheeks. He complained of headaches, pressing his small palms against his temples. "It hurts, Mummy. Inside my head, it hurts. It's probably just eye strain from reading so much, I said, though doubt gnawed at me. The stomachaches came next. He'd clutch his belly during dinner, pushing away foods he normally loved. My tummy feels weird, like it's squeezing. At night, he would wake up crying, stumbling into my room in his Batman pajamas, whispering that it hurt inside, that something felt wrong. I'd pull him into bed with me, his small body trembling against mine, and I'd stroke his hair until he fell back asleep. But even then, his sleep was restless, punctuated by whimpers and twitches. I tried to soothe him with warm milk, with longer bedtime stories, with extra cuddles. But every night I felt a gnawing anxiety spreading through my chest like ice water. The mother's intuition I'd always trusted was screaming that something was wrong, but I kept silencing it with logic and trust in Elena. Elena, always calm and composed when I mentioned these symptoms, would reassure me with scientific explanations. He's just adjusting. Think of it like starting a new exercise routine. There's always initial discomfort before the benefits become apparent. His body is recalibrating at a cellular level. The headaches are likely from increased neural activity. The stomach issues? His gut microbiome is adjusting to better nutrition. Give it time. Her explanations were always detailed, always plausible. She'd reference studies, use medical terminology I didn't quite understand, but that sounded authoritative. And I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that someone with her credentials, her experience, her apparent care for Mateo, wouldn't steer me wrong. Despite her reassurances, Mateo's fear grew. By mid-December, Mateo started hiding the pills. I'd find them under his pillow when changing his sheets, small white tablets pressed into the pillowcase, leaving faint marks. I found them in his toy box, nestled among Lego pieces. In his pockets when I did laundry, dissolving slightly from his nervous sweat. One evening, as I was tucking him in, he grabbed my hand with both of his. His grip was surprisingly strong, desperate. "Mum, I don't want them anymore." His voice cracked, and I saw real fear in his eyes, not the passing anxiety of childhood fears, but something deeper, more primal. "Why not, baby? They're helping you do so well in school." "I don't care about school." Tears spilled down his cheeks. "I just want to feel normal again. I want to feel like me." My heart sank, a leaden weight settling in my chest. But I'd already committed. Elena had given me 3 months' worth of pills, and she checked in regularly to track Mateo's progress. She'd show me charts, graphs, comparing his development to statistical averages. According to her data, Mateo was thriving, but the boy in front of me, with hollow eyes and trembling lips, didn't look like he was thriving. "Just a little longer," I heard myself say, and I hated the words even as they left my mouth. "Miss Elena says the adjustment period is almost over. Then you'll feel better, I promise." It was a promise I had no right to make. That night, I convinced him to take the pill anyway. I watched him swallow it with water from his Transformers cup, and I saw something in his expression that haunts me still: resignation. The look of a child who's learned that the adult they trust most won't listen to their pain. December turned to January. The Miami winter was unusually cool, temperatures dipping into the 60 seconds. Mateo's energy waned with the dropping mercury. His cheeks lost their rosy hue, taking on a greyish pallor that looked wrong against his naturally tan skin. His bright laughter quieted until our house, once filled with his joy, felt hollow and silent. At first, I blamed external factors. Miami's heat breaking into an unseasonable cold. The stress of schoolwork increased as they prepared for mid-year assessments. Growing pains, seasonal allergies, anything but the pills. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Every time Mateo looked at Elena during her visits, his body would go rigid. He'd press himself against my side, his small hand gripping my shirt. Elena would smile at him, that warm, genuine smile, and he'd look away. "He's shy today," I'd say, making excuses. "Children go through phases," Elena would reply. But I caught her studying Mateo with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. Our neighbor, Mrs. Alvarado, a retired nurse who lived 3 houses down, noticed during one of her morning walks. I was loading Mateo into the car for school when she approached, her weathered face creased with concern. "Lucia, Mija, is Mateo feeling all right?" she asked in her gentle, accented English. "He looks pale, thin." "He's fine," I said too quickly, defensive. "Just a growth spurt. You know how kids are." She placed her hand on my arm, her dark eyes searching mine. "I raised 5 children. I know what fine looks like. That boy is not fine." I laughed it off, insisting he was just tired from a busy school week. But her worried frown lingered in my mind all day, a warning I chose to ignore because acknowledging it would mean admitting I'd made a terrible mistake. By late January, Mateo was a shadow of himself. He'd lost weight, not dramatically, but enough that his favorite jeans hung loose on his hips. Dark circles ringed his eyes. He moved slowly, like an old man, careful and deliberate. His teacher emailed again, but this time with concern rather than praise. "Mateo seems lethargic in class. He fell asleep during story time today, which is very unlike him. Is everything okay at home?" I scheduled a pediatrician appointment, but I was terrified of what they might find. What if they asked about medications? What if I had to admit I'd been giving my son pills from someone who wasn't his doctor? The night before the appointment, Elena called. "I heard you're taking Mateo to see Dr. Stevens tomorrow. How did you—" Coral Gables is a small community. "Listen, Lucia, I don't think that's a good idea right now. His body is at a critical phase of adjustment. Introducing other medical opinions could interfere with the protocol." "Protocol? Elena, he's exhausted all the time. He's losing weight. I'm worried." Her voice hardened almost imperceptibly. "Do you trust me, Lucia? After everything I've done for you both? The progress he's made?" "Of course. But, then trust me now. Give it 2 more weeks. If he's not significantly better by then, I'll personally accompany you to the appointment and explain the situation to Dr. Stevens. But right now, interference could undo months of progress." I cancelled the appointment. I actually cancelled it. Looking back, I can't believe I did that. But Elena had a way of making me doubt myself, of making her perspective seem like the only logical one. She'd gaslight me so subtly I didn't even realize it was happening, affirming my concerns while redirecting me away from action, validating my worry while convincing me to wait just a little longer. 2 days later, everything changed. It was a Saturday morning. The sun streamed through our kitchen windows, hitting the marble countertops and making them gleam. I was making breakfast blueberry pancakes, Mateo's favorite, trying to coax some appetite back into him. He sat at the kitchen table in his pajamas, listlessly coloring in a dinosaur coloring book. "Can you get the juice from the fridge, baby?" I asked, flipping a pancake. Mateo slid off his chair with effort and walked to the refrigerator. I heard it open, heard him reach for the juice box on the lower shelf. Then I heard a sound I'll never forget, a soft thud, like a book dropping. I turned around and Mateo was on the floor. Not sitting, not lying down. Collapsed. His small body was sprawled on the cold tile, one arm twisted beneath him, his juice box rolling away, leaving a trail of apple juice across the floor. "Mateo!" I screamed, his name tearing from my throat in a way I'd never heard myself scream before. I dropped the spatula, it clattered against the stove, and ran to him. My knees hit the tile hard as I dropped beside him, pulling him into my arms. His eyes were open but unfocused, rolling slightly. His skin felt wrong, clammy and cool despite the warm morning. His lips had a faint bluish tinge. His breathing was shallow, rapid, like a frightened bird. "Baby, baby, look at me." "Mateo, look at Mommy." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold him. I patted his cheek, rubbed his chest. Wake up, please wake up." His eyelids fluttered. "Mummy?" His voice was barely a whisper. "I don't feel good." "I know, baby. I know. I'm getting help." I fumbled for my phone with one hand while keeping him cradled against me with the other. My fingers couldn't hit the right numbers. Finally, I managed 911. 911. "What's your emergency?" My son collapsed. He's 5 years old. He's conscious, but barely. Please, send someone now. Ma'am, I need your address. I gave it, the words tumbling out in a panicked rush. The operator asked more questions, his symptoms, his medical history. Was he breathing normally? I answered as best I could while Mateo's small body trembled in my arms. Ambulance is 3 minutes away. Stay on the line with me. Those 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. I held Mateo, whispering to him that he was okay, that help was coming, that Mummy was here. His eyes kept closing and I'd shake him gently, terrified that if he fell asleep he might not wake up. The sirens shattered the morning peace. Neighbors emerged from their perfect houses, standing in doorways and on lawns, watching as paramedics rushed up my driveway with equipment and urgency. The ambulance ride is a blur of fluorescent lights and medical jargon I didn't understand. Mateo lay on a stretcher that looked enormous around his small frame. An oxygen mask covering half his face, an IV taped to his tiny hand. A paramedic fired questions at me. Medications, allergies, recent illnesses, what he'd eaten. Does he take any medications? The paramedic asked, checking Mateo's blood pressure for the 3rd time. This was the moment I had to admit what I'd done. Supplements, I whispered. A friend gave him supplements. What kind? Do you have them with you? No, they're at home. She said they were vitamins, natural ingredients. The paramedic exchanged a look with his partner that made my stomach drop. How long has he been taking them? About 2 months. We'll need to see those supplements. At Miami Children's Hospital, we race through automatic doors into a world of controlled chaos, doctors in scrubs, nurses moving with purpose, the steady beep of monitors, the smell of antiseptic that burned my nostrils. Mateo was taken immediately to the ER while I was directed to registration. I could barely hold the pen to fill out forms. A police officer showed up to our house. They'd sent someone to collect the pills I'd described. I gave them Elena's information, her number, her address, everything spilling out in a confession I should have made weeks earlier. Dr. Ruiz, a pediatric emergency physician with kind eyes and grey temples, came to find me in the waiting room after what felt like an eternity. I stood up so fast I knocked over the coffee I hadn't been drinking. How is he? Is he okay? Please tell me he's okay. Your son is stable, he said, and I nearly collapsed with relief. We've run comprehensive blood work, and we're monitoring his vitals closely. But Miss Delgado, I need to speak with you about something serious. He led me to a private consultation room, small, beige, with a box of tissues on the table that I knew from experience meant bad news was coming. Your son's blood work shows traces of a pharmaceutical sedative, benzodiazepine derivatives. To be specific, there are also unusually high levels of certain nootropic compounds that aren't approved for pediatric use. Some of these substances shouldn't be combined, especially not in a child. The room tilted. But they were vitamins. Elena said they were just vitamins. I don't know what you were told, but these aren't vitamins. His voice was gentle but firm. These are potent pharmaceutical compounds. The dosages we're seeing are inappropriate for an adult, let alone a 5-year-old child. Someone gave your son something dangerous, intentionally or not. Intentionally or not. The words echoed in my head. There was no or not. Elena knew exactly what she was giving him. She had a PhD. She'd researched this. She'd told me it was safe. She'd lied. The truth hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath. Elena, my trusted friend, the woman I had welcomed into my home, had betrayed my son. She'd used him as what, a test subject, an experiment? Rage, fear, and heartbreak collided inside me, each emotion fighting for dominance, but underneath it all was a crushing guilt. I had done this. I had given Mateo those pills. I had ignored his fear, his physical symptoms, his desperate pleas. I had chosen to trust a woman I barely knew over my own child. They kept Mateo overnight for observation and continued treatment. I sat beside his hospital bed, watching him sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks, his small chest rising and falling with steady breaths. An IV drip flushed his system. Monitors tracked his heart rate, his oxygen levels, his brain activity. At dawn, I called my sister Lucia to stay with Mateo. Then I drove to Elena's home in Coconut Grove, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The sun was rising over Biscayne Bay, painting the water gold and pink, indifferent to the fury burning inside me. Elena's house was everything mine wasn't: a waterfront mansion with gleaming glass walls, a private dock where a small yacht bobbed gently, palm trees perfectly spaced across a lawn that looked like it was measured with a ruler. The kind of house that appeared in architecture magazines. The kind of house that declared, successful, important, untouchable. I rang the doorbell repeatedly until she answered, wearing a silk robe, her hair loose around her shoulders. When she saw my face, her expression shifted from surprise to something like resignation. "Lucia, I can explain. My son is in the hospital." My voice shook with barely controlled rage. He collapsed. They found pharmaceutical drugs in his blood, experimental compounds. "What the hell did you give him?" She stepped back, gesturing for me to come inside. The interior was all marble and modern art, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. It felt cold despite the warm Miami morning. "Please, let me explain," she said, her voice steady, almost clinical. "Come sit down." "I don't want to sit down. I want answers." I was screaming now, months of suppressed fear and intuition erupting. "How could you give my son this? What were you thinking?" Elena's composure cracked slightly. She ran a hand through her hair, and I saw her hand was trembling. "He needed it. I was helping him grow, helping him reach his potential." His potential? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He's 5 years old. He was perfect exactly as he was. No child is perfect, Lucia. We can always improve, always enhance. Her eyes took on that fervent gleam I'd seen when she talked about her research. "The compounds I developed, they're revolutionary. They enhance neuroplasticity, increase cognitive function, and improve memory consolidation. In clinical trials." Clinical trials? The words felt like ice in my mouth. Is that what my son was to you? A clinical trial? A lab rat? Elena's facade finally shattered. She sank onto her white leather couch, her head in her hands. "I never meant to hurt him. You have to believe that," I thought. I thought I could control the dosage, manage the side effects. Side effects? Side effects? I was pacing now, too angry to stand still. He was having headaches, stomach aches, and collapsing. Those aren't side effects, that's poisoning. I was monitoring him. I adjusted the formulation 3 times based on his responses. The technology behind these compounds is groundbreaking. It could revolutionize pediatric cognitive development, help children with learning disabilities, with ADHD, with— Stop. I held up my hand. "Stop trying to justify this. You experimented on my child without my informed consent. You lied to me about what you were giving him. You could have killed him." She looked up at me, and I saw tears in her eyes. "I've dedicated 15 years to this research. My entire career. I've been rejected by every pharmaceutical company, every research grant committee. They said my methods were too aggressive, too risky. But I knew I was right. I knew these compounds could work if we could just get the dosages correct. The pieces fell into place. You used Mateo to prove your research. You needed results you could show to funding committees. Not just that." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I needed to know if it worked. If my life's work meant something. If I could actually make a difference instead of being another failed researcher whose theories died in university archives." I stared at this woman I thought I knew. She wasn't a monster. She was something potentially more dangerous, a true believer, someone so convinced of their righteous cause that they'd sacrifice anything, anyone, to achieve it. "You talked about helping children," I said slowly, "but you only cared about your own validation, your own legacy. My son's health, his safety, his childhood. None of that mattered to you, as much as proving you were right." Elena didn't deny it. She sat there, crying, admitting she hadn't known another way, that the ends justified the means, that she never intended for Mateo to get hurt, that she'd believed she could control every variable, but she couldn't, and Mateo had paid the price. I called the police from her living room, watched as she was questioned, as they collected the remaining pills, as they documented her home laboratory in a spare bedroom where she'd been manufacturing these compounds. She'd been so careful about the chemistry but so reckless about the ethics. Child Protective Services opened an investigation into me as well. I had to prove I hadn't known what I was giving Mateo, that I'd been deceived. It was humiliating, terrifying, necessary. They assigned us a caseworker, required supervised visits initially until they verified I was a fit parent. Elena's medical license came under review. She faced potential criminal charges, reckless endangerment of a minor, practicing medicine without proper authorization, conducting unethical human experiments. Her defense was her genuine belief she was helping. But intention doesn't absolve someone of harm done. The woman I'd trusted, who I'd invited into our lives, was restricted from contact with minors, placed under investigation, and required supervision for her research activities. Her career, the thing she'd sacrificed my son's well-being for, was effectively over. Mateo began to recover physically within weeks. The hospital's treatment flushed most of the compounds from his system. His color returned first, the healthy tan replacing that awful gray pallor. His energy came back gradually, like spring sunshine breaking through winter clouds. He started laughing again, really laughing. Not the forced smiles he'd been giving me, but the emotional scars ran deeper than any physical damage. Every night for months, he would wake trembling, and I would rush to his room, scoop him into my arms, and hold him while he cried. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Mummy should have listened to you. You were right, and I was wrong." "Why didn't you listen?" he asked one night, his small voice cracking my heart open. "I told you they hurt. I told you I didn't want them. Because I made a terrible mistake. I trusted the wrong person, and I didn't trust my own son when I should have." I held him closer, tears streaming down my face. "But I promise you, I will never, ever ignore you again. When you tell me something hurts, when you tell me you're scared, I will always listen." It became our nightly ritual apologies, reassurance, rebuilding trust, one conversation at a time. We started therapy. Dr. Williams, a child psychologist, helped Mateo process what had happened. She gave him tools to express his feelings, to understand that what happened wasn't his fault. She taught me how to recognize signs of trauma, how to support him without smothering him with my guilt. Slowly, painfully, we rebuilt what Elena had nearly destroyed. Returning to school was difficult. Teachers had noticed Mateo's quiet withdrawal during the worst of it, and now they watched him with careful concern. At pickup, other mothers would give me sympathetic looks or avoid eye contact entirely. Word had spread about what happened. Coral Gables was a small community, and scandal travelled fast. Mateo clung to me during drop-offs, whispering about pills that taste funny in nightmares, dreams that scared him where Elena chased him with bottles of white tablets. I had to reassure him repeatedly that he was safe, that he'd never have to take those pills again, that Elena couldn't come near him. His teacher, Mrs. Chen, was wonderful. She created a safe space for him in class, never pushing too hard, celebrating small victories. When Mateo finally participated in show and tell again, bringing his favorite dinosaur toy and talking about pteranodons, I cried in my car in the parking lot. The other parents were mixed in their reactions. Some were supportive, bringing meals, offering playdates, showing up with kindness. Others judged quietly, their whispered conversations cutting off when I approached. I heard fragments. "Can you imagine? How could she not know? If it were my child." I couldn't blame them. I asked myself the same questions every day. Mrs. Alvarado became one of our fiercest advocates. She would stop by with homemade empanadas, sit with Mateo while he did homework, and tell him stories about her own grandchildren. "You listen to your body, mijo," she'd tell him. "Your body tells you the truth always." Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Other neighbors noticed Elena's charm had hidden warning signs they'd dismissed. She was always too interested in children at the park. One mother told me. She'd watch them, take notes on her phone. I thought she was just a dedicated researcher. But now, the whispers reached me about Elena's patterns. She'd tried to befriend other families with gifted children before ours. None had gotten as far as we had. Most parents had felt something was off and distanced themselves. I hadn't trusted my instincts the way they had. Every palm-lined sidewalk in our neighborhood felt like a reminder that danger can hide in plain sight, that perfect exteriors can conceal rot underneath. The beautiful houses, the manicured lawns, the prestigious schools, none of it meant safety. Safety comes from vigilance, from trusting your instincts, from listening to the people you love most. I learned painful lessons that year. Blind trust is dangerous, even in someone you've known for months, someone with credentials and charisma and apparent good intentions. Credentials don't equal character. Education doesn't guarantee ethics. And sometimes the people who seem most eager to help have motives that have nothing to do with your well-being. Most importantly, I learned to never ignore the fears of a child, no matter how small they seem. Children know their bodies. They feel when something is wrong, even if they can't articulate it in adult terms. When Mateo said the pills made him feel funny inside, he was telling me the truth. His body was screaming warnings that I ignored because I trusted an adult more than I trusted my 5-year-old son. That's a mistake I'll carry with me forever. But I also learned about resilience, my son's and my own. I learned that trust, once broken, can be rebuilt with patience and honesty. I learned that guilt can be transformed into vigilance, that trauma can teach us to be stronger protectors. As the police investigation deepened, a more disturbing picture emerged. Elena hadn't just targeted Mateo. She'd been building toward this for years. Detective Rodriguez, the lead investigator on the case, called me in for an interview 3 weeks after Mateo's collapse. We sat in a grey room at the Coral Gables police station, and he laid out a folder thick with documentation. Miss Delgado, we've been looking into Dr. Martinez's background. What we found is concerning. He opened the folder, revealing photographs of other children, other families. In the past 4 years, she's attempted to mentor at least 7 families with gifted children in South Florida. Most parents cut contact after a few weeks, sensing something was off. You're the only one who accepted her supplements. My stomach turned. Why me? You were vulnerable. Single parent, working from home. No extended family nearby. She profiled you carefully. He showed me printouts of social media posts I'd made, celebrating Mateo's achievements, mentioning feeling overwhelmed, joking about being a solo parent. She knew exactly what you needed. Support, validation, someone to share the burden. The manipulation went deeper than I'd realized. Elena had studied me like one of her research subjects, identifying my pressure points, my insecurities, my dreams for Mateo. She'd become exactly the friend I needed, filling gaps in my life with surgical precision. We found her research notes, Detective Rodriguez continued, sliding over photocopies of handwritten journals. She's been documenting Mateo's progress in clinical terms, dosage adjustments, behavioral observations, cognitive assessments. She viewed him as Subject M7. Subject M7. Not Mateo. Not a child. A data point. Further investigation revealed Elena's tragic trajectory. She'd been a promising researcher once, published in respected journals, working on legitimate neuroplasticity studies at Johns Hopkins. Then her methodology became increasingly aggressive. Her ethics committees raised red flags, and funding dried up. She'd been forced out of academic research 5 years ago after proposing human trials that review boards deemed unethical. She wanted to test cognitive enhancement compounds on children as young as 3, Detective Rodriguez explained. The university rejected it unanimously. She lost her position, her lab, her reputation. Elena had moved to Miami to start over, but she couldn't let go of her research. Without institutional backing, without ethical oversight, she decided to conduct her own trials. privately, secretly, using children whose parents trusted her. The compounds themselves are sophisticated, the detective said. We had them analyzed by DEA chemists. Some ingredients are legal nootropics, but others are pharmaceutical-grade benzodiazepines and experimental neurochemicals that haven't passed FDA trials. She was synthesizing them in her home lab. How did she even get these chemicals? Dark web, mostly. Some from overseas pharmaceutical suppliers with lax regulations. She was smart about it, small orders, different suppliers, nothing that would raise flags individually, but together. He shook his head. She built a complete pharmaceutical laboratory in her spare bedroom. I thought about the times Mateo and I had visited her house, how she'd always kept that door closed. Research in progress, she'd say with a smile. We'd never questioned it. Detective Rodriguez connected me with 2 other families Elena had targeted before she found me. The Johnsons from Pinecrest and the Reyes family from South Miami. Sarah Johnson met me at a coffee shop in Coconut Grove, bringing her 7-year-old daughter Emma. Elena approached us at a Mensa family event, Sarah explained, stirring her latte with shaking hands. Emma had just been tested with an IQ of 142, and I was overwhelmed trying to figure out how to challenge her appropriately. Elena seemed like a godsend. What made you stop seeing her? Emma didn't like her. That's it, just a child's instinct. Emma would hide behind me whenever Elena came over, wouldn't make eye contact. One day, Emma said, "Mummy, that lady looks at me like I'm a science project." I trusted my daughter and cut contact. I thought I was being paranoid. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. When I heard what happened to Mateo, I felt sick. If I hadn't listened to Emma, if I'd accepted when Elena offered those vitamins. The Reyes family had a similar story. Their son Miguel was gifted in mathematics, doing calculus at age 8. Elena had befriended them, offered guidance, suggested nutritional support for Miguel's developing brain, but Mr. Reyes, a pharmacist, had asked to see the ingredient list. She got defensive immediately, Carlos Reyes told me over the phone. Said it was proprietary, that I'd have to sign an NDA to see the full formulation. That's when I knew something was wrong. Legitimate supplements have ingredients listed. I told her we weren't interested, and she became angry. Told me I was limiting my son's potential, that I'd regret not trusting her expertise. He paused. I'm sorry about what happened to Mateo. I should have reported her then, but I didn't have proof of anything illegal, just a bad feeling. These conversations showed me how close we'd all come to disaster, and how many times my son could have been spared if I'd just listened to that same bad feeling, that mother's intuition, whispering that something wasn't right. The criminal case against Elena took months to build. The district attorney's office assembled a team to prosecute criminal child endangerment, practicing medicine without a license, conducting illegal human experiments, manufacturing controlled substances, and fraud. I had to testify before a grand jury, recounting every detail of how Elena had groomed our trust, deceived me about the pill's contents, and dismissed Mateo's symptoms. It was humiliating, admitting my failures as a mother in a room full of strangers, but it was necessary. Elena's defense attorney painted her as a misguided but well-intentioned researcher who believed she was helping, whose methods were unorthodox but whose intentions were pure. They brought in character witnesses, former colleagues who spoke of her passion for helping children, her dedication to science, her genuine belief in her research. But the prosecutor, a fierce woman named Amanda Cortez, dismantled that narrative systematically. Passion doesn't excuse poisoning a child, she argued. Dedication to science doesn't permit using a 5-year-old as an unconsenting test subject. Good intentions don't override medical ethics, informed consent laws, and basic human decency. The evidence was damning. Elena's detailed notes tracking Mateo's adverse reactions while continuing to adjust dosages, her lab equipment for synthesizing controlled substances, her communications with illegal chemical suppliers, her pattern of targeting vulnerable families. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I attended every day, sitting behind the prosecutor's table, Mateo at home with my sister, because exposing him to this circus felt cruel. The courtroom in downtown Miami was all dark wood and fluorescent lights, filled with lawyers, journalists, curious onlookers, and Elena's small circle of supporters who still believed she'd been trying to help. Elena wore conservative suits, her hair pulled back, makeup minimal. She looked nothing like the elegant woman who'd charmed her way into my life. She looked small, defeated, and human. The prosecution called expert witnesses, toxicologists who explained the dangers of the compounds found in Mateo's blood, medical ethicists who outlined the violations of research standards, child psychologists who discussed the trauma inflicted on test subjects. Dr. Morrison, a toxicology expert from the University of Miami, testified that the compound combination was extraordinarily dangerous for a developing brain. The benzodiazepine derivatives alone could cause respiratory depression, sedation, and in extreme cases, organ failure. Combined with experimental nootropics in high doses, you're essentially creating a neurochemical lottery where the child's brain chemistry is being radically altered without any understanding of long-term consequences. When asked what could have happened if Mateo had continued taking the pills, Dr. Morrison was blunt: seizures, cardiac arrest, permanent neurological damage, or death. This child was extraordinarily lucky. I wept hearing that. Mateo could have died, and I would have been the one who killed him by trusting the wrong person. Then it was my turn to testify. I walked to the witness stand on shaking legs, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Amanda Cortez led me through my testimony, gently, but thoroughly. Miss Delgado, how did you meet the defendant? I recounted our first meeting at Mateo's school, how Elena had seemed knowledgeable and caring, how she'd gradually become part of our lives. When she first offered you the supplements, what did she tell you they were? Vitamins. Natural supplements to enhance Mateo's growth and cognitive development. She said they were safe, that she'd tested them extensively. Did she ever disclose the actual ingredients? No. She said it was proprietary, but that everything was natural and FDA approved. My voice cracked. I trusted her. She had a PhD. She seemed to genuinely care about Mateo. Did your son express concerns about taking these pills? This was the hardest part. Yes. From the first day. He was afraid. He said they made him feel strange. He begged me not to make him take them. Tears streamed down my face. And I didn't listen. I thought I knew better. I thought I was helping him. Elena's lawyer cross-examined me, trying to establish that I'd been a willing, informed participant, that Elena had been transparent about her research. But I held firm. She lied to me. She told me they were vitamins, not experimental drugs. She dismissed every symptom as adjustment. She manipulated me into ignoring my own child's suffering. The defense tried to paint me as negligent, suggesting I should have questioned more, researched more, consulted Mateo's pediatrician. They weren't wrong. I should have done all those things. But that didn't absolve Elena of deliberately deceiving me. When I stepped down from the witness stand, I felt hollowed out but also relieved. The truth was on record. Whatever happened next, I'd told my story. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict: guilty on all counts. I watched Elena's face as the verdict was read. She didn't cry and didn't react dramatically. She simply closed her eyes, her shoulders sagging as if an invisible weight had finally crushed her. Her parents, sitting in the gallery, wept quietly. At sentencing 2 weeks later, the judge was stern. Dr. Martinez, you violated the most fundamental principle of medical ethics. First, do no harm. You used your education and charm to manipulate a vulnerable family, and you experimented on a child who couldn't consent and didn't understand what was happening to him. Your intentions, however pure you believe them to be, do not excuse your actions. Elena was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 10 years of probation, with restrictions on working with children or conducting any form of human research. Her medical credentials were permanently revoked. She would have to register as someone who'd committed crimes against children. 8 years felt simultaneously like too much and not enough. Too much because I could see the brilliant researcher she might have been if she'd stayed within ethical boundaries. Not enough because Mateo would carry his trauma far longer than 8 years. Before being taken into custody, Elena was given a chance to address the court. She stood, her hands trembling, and turned to look at me for the first time during the trial. "Lucia," she began, her voice breaking, "I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't expect you to. I want you to know that everything I did, I believed I was helping. I believed my research could change the world and could help millions of children reach their potential. But I see now that I was so obsessed with the goal that I lost sight of the individual child in front of me." She paused, wiping tears. "Mateo wasn't Subject M7 to me, not really. I cared about him. I watched him grow, celebrated his achievements, worried when he struggled. But I cared about my research more, and that's my eternal shame. I prioritized my legacy over his well-being. I convinced myself that the ends justified the means, that a little discomfort now would lead to breakthrough benefits later." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I was wrong. There's no excuse, no justification. I harmed a beautiful child who trusted me, and I betrayed a friend who welcomed me into her life. If I could undo everything, go back to that first day at the school, and just walk away, I would. But I can't. All I can do is accept my punishment and live with what I've done." She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I deserve everything you've decided. I hope that someday, when Mateo is older, he might understand that I never wanted to hurt him, even though that's exactly what I did." The bailiff led her away, and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not relief, not even anger anymore. Just emptiness where all those emotions had burned themselves out. After the trial, life slowly returned to a new normal. Mateo continued therapy, and Dr. Williams reported encouraging progress. His nightmares decreased from nightly to weekly, then monthly. He started sleeping through the night again. His appetite returned fully, and his energy rebounded to typical 5-year-old chaos. But some changes were permanent. Mateo developed an intense wariness of adults outside our immediate circle. Meeting new people required careful preparation and patience. He'd ask questions. Do we know them? How do we know them? Are they safe? I never dismissed these questions, never told him he was being silly. "It's good to ask questions, baby. It's smart to be careful. I'll always tell you the truth about people, and you should always tell me if someone makes you uncomfortable." We established new rules. No medication without written approval from Dr. Stevens, his pediatrician. No secrets between us, no matter what anyone said. If something hurt or felt wrong, Mateo would tell me immediately, and I would believe him. School became easier as months passed. Mateo made friends again, joined the soccer team, and participated in science fairs. He was still gifted, still curious, still brilliant, but now he was also cautious, observant, questioning. Elena had stolen some of his innocent trust in the world, but she'd also taught him self-advocacy and awareness. I had to work through my own trauma too. I saw a therapist who helped me process the guilt, the shame, the anger at myself for not protecting Mateo better. I learned that I couldn't change the past, but I could learn from it, use it to become a more vigilant, more present parent. My sister Lucia moved to Miami to be closer to us. Mrs. Alvarado became like a grandmother to Mateo, teaching him to cook her famous empanadas, telling him stories in Spanish, giving him that connection to community and safety. We built a new village around us, one based not on impressive credentials or charm, but on genuine care, transparency, and earned trust over time. Looking back, there were so many red flags I missed or dismissed. I want to share them with you because if this video can prevent even one family from going through what we did, then reliving this nightmare will have been worth it. Red flag Hashon. Too perfect, too interested. Elena was almost too good to be true, sophisticated, educated, genuinely interested in my son, offering help that seemed selfless and generous. Real friendships develop gradually, with reciprocity and boundaries. Elena bulldozed into our lives with overwhelming generosity that should have made me question her motivations. If someone seems overly invested in your child, especially if they have no prior connection to you, ask yourself why. What are they getting from this relationship? Red flag #2. Dismissing your child's concerns. When Mateo said the pills made him feel strange, hurt him, scared him, I should have stopped immediately. Period. Children know their bodies. They feel what's happening inside them even if they can't articulate it in medical terms. Never prioritize adult assurances over your child's expressed discomfort. If your child is afraid of something or someone, investigate why before dismissing it as childish anxiety. Red flag #3. Secrecy and proprietary information. Elena refused to show me full ingredient lists, saying her formula was proprietary. That's a massive warning sign. Anything you're putting into your child's body should be fully transparent. Legitimate supplements list all ingredients. Legitimate professionals welcome questions and scrutiny. If someone asks you to just trust them without providing concrete information, don't. Trust requires transparency. Red flag #4. Isolation from professional oversight. Elena discouraged me from mentioning the supplements to Mateo's pediatrician, saying it would complicate his care. She wanted to keep our arrangement private, just between us. That isolation was intentional. It prevented other professionals from questioning what she was doing. Any health-related intervention for your child should be discussed with their doctor. Anyone who discourages this is hiding something. Red flag #5. Escalating commitment. Elena used classic cult manipulation tactics. Start small, build trust. Gradually increase commitment until you're so invested you ignore warning signs. First it was just coffee, then babysitting, then educational materials, then supplements. Each step seemed small, but together they created a web of obligation and trust that was hard to break. Be aware of gradual escalation in any relationship, especially ones involving your children. Our case wasn't isolated. As I connected with other families and researched online, I discovered that predatory behavior targeting gifted children and anxious parents is more common than most people realize. There's an entire industry of child optimization unlicensed experts offering programs, supplements, treatments to make your child smarter, faster, better. They prey on parents' desires to give their children every advantage, to help them reach their full potential. Some are legitimate and helpful, but others are dangerous, operating in grey areas of regulation, vague making claims that aren't backed by science, prioritizing profit or ego over children's well-being. The supplement industry especially is poorly regulated. The FDA doesn't approve dietary supplements before they hit the market. Companies can make claims that aren't verified. Harmful ingredients can hide behind labels like proprietary blends, and parents, overwhelmed and wanting the best for their children, become vulnerable to these predatory promises. Detective Rodriguez told me that cases like ours are increasing. We see it with unregulated tutoring programs promising genius-level results, cognitive enhancement supplements, and experimental education methods. Parents are desperate to give their kids an edge, and unethical people exploit that desperation. We need better regulations, better oversight, better education about these risks. But until that happens, parents need to be vigilant, skeptical, and protective. Elena writes to me from prison. Not often, maybe once every few months. Her letters are apologetic, reflective, sometimes defensive. She talks about her childhood, her pressure to achieve, her belief that her worth came from her accomplishments. I thought if I could just prove my research worked, I'd finally matter, she wrote in one letter. My parents always told me I was wasting my potential, that I needed to do something significant with my life. I internalized that pressure until it consumed me. Mateo became a means to an end I'd been chasing my whole life. I don't respond to her letters. I can't. But I read them, and I see a cautionary tale about the dangers of tying your self-worth to external achievement, about what happens when ego and desperation override ethics and empathy. Some part of me feels sorry for her, the brilliant woman who destroyed her own life along with nearly destroying my son's. But mostly, I feel the weight of what she stole from Mateo. Months of his childhood, his innocent trust, his sense of safety. She ends every letter the same way. I'm sorry. I'll be sorry every day for the rest of my life. I hope someday Mateo can understand I never meant to hurt him. But intention doesn't erase impact, and Mateo shouldn't have to understand or forgive, he just needs to heal. Mateo is 7 now, thriving despite everything. He's in 2nd grade, still gifted, still curious about the world, but he's also cautious, observant, questioning in ways most 7-year-olds aren't. Last week, he asked me, "Mum, why did Miss Elena give me those pills if she knew they could hurt me?" I took a deep breath, considering how to answer honestly without destroying his worldview. Sometimes adults make really bad decisions because they want something so much they stop thinking about who they might hurt. Miss Elena wanted her work to be successful more than she wanted to keep you safe, and that was very, very wrong. He thought about this, his young face serious. So even grown-ups make mistakes? Yes, baby. Even big mistakes. That's why it's important to always tell someone if something feels wrong, even if a grown-up says it's okay. Your feelings matter. Your voice matters. He nodded, satisfied with this answer, and went back to building his elaborate Lego spaceship. But I saw him glance at me, checking that I was still there, still listening, still protective. That's our new reality. Mateo is learning to trust again, but he's also learning discernment. He's learning that trust must be earned, that authority figures aren't always right, that his own instincts and voice matter. In some ways, Elena's betrayal taught him lessons most children don't learn until they're much older. I wish he didn't have to learn them at 5, but maybe these hard-won lessons will protect him throughout his life. If you've watched this far, you understand now what I wish I'd understood 2 years ago. The people we trust most can sometimes hide the darkest secrets. Danger doesn't always look like a stranger in a van offering candy. Sometimes it looks like a sophisticated professional with credentials. Sometimes it looks like a sophisticated professional with credentials and good intentions. So what can you do to protect your children? Listen to your children. When they express fear, discomfort, or pain, believe them. Investigate. Don't dismiss their concerns because an adult tells you everything's fine. Trust your instincts. That uncomfortable feeling in your gut, that's not paranoia. That's your subconscious processing subtle warning signs your conscious mind hasn't identified yet. Honor it. Verify credentials and claims. If someone offers medical interventions, supplements, or treatments for your child, research independently. Consult your pediatrician. Check licensing boards. Don't accept proprietary information as an excuse for secrecy. Maintain professional oversight. Any health-related intervention should involve your child's doctor. Anyone who discourages this is waving a giant red flag. Go slow with new relationships. Trust develops over time through consistent, transparent behavior. Anyone pushing for rapid intimacy or access to your child should be questioned. Build a community of care. Don't isolate yourself. Maintain connections with family, friends, teachers, healthcare providers. Predators thrive in isolation. Safety thrives in community. Teach your children body autonomy and self-advocacy. Mateo learned too late that he could say no, that his discomfort mattered. Teach your children early that they have the right to refuse things that hurt them or scare them, even from trusted adults. To the parents watching this, I want you to know something. I was a good mother. I am a good mother. I made a catastrophic mistake, but that doesn't erase the love, the care, the protection I provide for Mateo every single day. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, made a decision that hurt someone you love, ignored your instincts to devastating effect, you're not alone. Parenting is impossibly hard. We're trying to raise children in a world full of hidden dangers while also not terrifying them into paralysis. We're trying to trust people enough to build community while also protecting our kids from predators. It's an impossible balance. What happened to me could happen to anyone. Elena was skilled at manipulation. She studied psychology and human behavior. She knew how to target vulnerabilities and exploit them. I don't excuse my failures, but I also don't carry all the blame. Elena made deliberate choices to deceive and harm. That's on her. But I do carry the responsibility to learn from this, to share this story, to help other parents avoid the trap I fell into. If this video makes you more cautious, more questioning, more protective of your children, then Mateo's suffering has created some good in the world. Blind trust can have catastrophic consequences. I trusted Elena with my son's health based on her charm, her credentials, and my desire to believe someone cared about us. That trust nearly killed Mateo. Now, I trust carefully, slowly, with verification and transparency. I trust people who welcome my questions, who understand my caution, who respect boundaries, and prove themselves reliable over time. And most importantly, I trust Mateo. When he tells me something hurts, I believe him. When he's uncomfortable, I investigate. When he's afraid, I protect him. His voice is the most important voice in his life, and I will never silence it again. This is the lesson I learned through near tragedy, when the life of someone I love is hung by the thinnest thread. Protection requires vigilance, trust requires verification, and love means listening especially when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. If you've watched this entire story, comment below with number Protect Our Children and share where you're watching from. Tell me, have you ever had to make a hard choice to protect someone you love? Have you ever had a moment where you realized someone you trusted was dangerous? Subscribe to this channel because awareness saves lives. Share this video with every parent you know. The more we talk about these dangers, the harder it becomes for predators like Elena to operate in shadows. And remember, the people we trust most can sometimes hide the darkest secrets. Stay vigilant. Stay questioning. Stay protective, because our children are watching us to keep them safe, and they deserve nothing less than our absolute commitment to that responsibility. Thank you for watching. Protect your children. Trust your instincts. And never, ever ignore the voice of a child telling you something is wrong. I see you in the next video.